Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 7th Annual Local Author Fair brought by the Story Center at Mid-Continent Public Library. My name is Dave Burns. I'm the Story Center Publication Manager, and we're very excited to have all of you here with us and have these authors here to talk about their books and their process. So thank you for being here with me this morning. We have Polly McCann. We have Robert Long Foreman, Don Downey, and Kathy Perry here. So without further ado, I'm going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their projects. And Polly, can we start with you?
Sure. Hi, I'm Polly Alice McCann. I'm featuring a new book today that just came out about a month ago. It's called Tales from the Dream Zone. So I'm excited to talk about that today. I'm the editor and the illustrator of the book, and it has several authors from around the world writing short stories.
Cool.
That's fantastic. And while the authors are talking, I'm going to share their websites in the chat. So feel free to check that out where you can learn a little bit more about them and maybe get a chance to pick up a book. Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing, Polly. Robert, would you like to take a second and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Robert Long Foreman. I am a writer living in Kansas City. I'm originally from West Virginia. The book that I am promoting today is called Weird Pig. It's a novel about a pig named Weird Pig who starts out as a perfectly innocent, almost like the pig from the movie. The idea behind the novel originally was like, let's say Babe the pig ends up like at the wrong farm, but horribly mismanaged, and like all the animals are really petty and horrible. And sort of like it sort of goes from there. Like he starts out living in the suburbs and then he moves to the farm where he's sort of slowly, or actually quite quickly, kind of corrupted by the various forces around him. And it's sort of, it's the narrative, the arc of the novel is basically like the pig is corrupted, and then the Weird Pig, goes on to corrupt America, and sort of and he's sort of unleashed on the world, and burns people's houses down, and becomes the star of a series of children's books, and sort of joins the army at one point. It's basically like I'll talk more a little bit about how it came together, but that's essentially it. And it's fun. It's supposed to be funny. I guess I always leave that part out, but yeah.
That's fantastic, Robert. Thank you. Awesome. And we have Don Downey here with us. And just so you all know, unfortunately, we're having some technical difficulty with Dawn's video, but she is still here to share with us about her book and her writing. So Dawn, if you would.
Thank you. So we decided to pretend like I'm a bad foreign movie, and I use minimum wage dubbers for the translation. So I write personal essays about blue Christmas lights. All my life, I believed Christmas lights had to be red, green, and white. Never, ever blue. The universe played a trick on me and moved in a next door neighbor who does his entire outdoor holiday display every year only in blue lights. But what I'm curious about and what I write about is, what is it in me that gives power to blue Christmas lights and other arbitrary beliefs? My latest book is, here it comes. Wait for it. Blindsided: Essays about the only Black woman in the room. So I write about the things that make me uncomfortable. And in this book, the stories show that after I dive into my discomfort about being the only Black woman, then I find my authentic self. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you very much for sharing. And Kathy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay. I'm Kathy J. Perry, and I put my middle initial in there because if you don't, you get confused with the musician. So that's why my website is Kathy J. Perry. Anyway, my latest novel, well, my first novel really, is Emmeline, A Journey. It's a Christian historical fiction adventure. And it's about a young girl, 13 years old, who travels across the country to meet her grandfather after her parents have passed, and she needs to find family. And it's not only a riveting plot because she encounters a lot of trouble on the way, as you can well imagine, but she also has a journey of faith. When she starts out, she's just very dependent on other people. But as she reads her dad's Bible and does journaling on the way, she grows to be more independent in her faith and grows that way too. So it's like a subplot. But it's not only an adventure, but it's also educational because there's a lot of research I did about 1890. Almost every sentence. Did they use this word then? Yeah. And there was a lot of things I learned and a lot of things that people will learn when they read it because you are immersed in the period. So enjoy.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I'll let everyone who's watching know that we are going to do a bit of a Q&A towards the end. So feel free to chat in any questions and we will address those towards the end of the broadcast. But authors, thank you for introducing yourselves. And we just had a few questions we wanted to kind of chat and throw out there. And if it's okay with you, we'll kind of follow that same pattern of Polly, Robert, Dawn, and Kathy. So the first question is, what inspired you to write this piece that you're sharing today? Polly?
Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate being first, but not really.
Not really. Okay. You can quick it up if you like. That's fine.
Let's see. So this book took about 2 years to create. And how it came about was I went and got my master's degree in writing at Hamline University. It has a wonderful low residency program. And I studied how to write for young adults and children. I did poetry, short stories. But my main love has always been dreams. And the more I've studied them, I decided to choose that for my master's thesis. And I discovered that dreams are a lot like stories. And that since ancient times, people have always thought that if you go to, like Aristotle believed, if you go to a community event like a movie or a play, they didn't have movies back then, a play or a story, you all sort of have a shared dream, right? And so you get that sort of cathartic healing experience, like at the end of Star Wars, you're elated, you feel empowered, energized. And so that's what I want my stories to be like. I want them to feel dreamy, but also inspiring and energizing. And so I decided, what if I collected other writers' work and we put it into a short story collection so we could just sort of quick, easily in between work and dropping off kids and all of our projects, just have something fun and inspiring. So I did a different collection last year that has one of my stories in it. But we always have art in it. So with this one, it's just based on my personal love for dreams. It has my art in it. And each story is spooky. There's a planet full of little moons that fall from the sky, ghosts, all the best stuff, you know.
It's awesome. That sounds fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Robert, would you like to talk a bit?
Yeah, about what inspired Weird Pig. So yes, and I'll hold up my book while I'm since it might not be obvious. In case you're just tuning in, so this book sort of had a I don't know, its origin was kind of troubled. So I wrote it at a point where I had written a novel and I had an agent at the time, and the agent had sent it out to a bunch of places, and I was very careful with that particular novel. I spent 2 years writing it, and no editors, no agent, or like the agent would send it out to editors, no editors wanted it. at the same time, it was kind of, I was slowly realizing, or I had sort of come around to realizing I was going to have to quit my teaching job. And also, most importantly, there was a baby in our house, and I just actually heard her upstairs yelling about something. She's wonderful, but as a baby, she was horrible. She was a very colicky baby. And nobody was getting, I mean, I'm an insomniac anyway, so nobody was getting any sleep. Stephanie, my wife, was not sleeping. So I wasn't writing anything because a baby takes over your whole life. And so I decided, since I wasn't writing anything and I wasn't sleeping at night, what I would do is go downstairs to my basement for 40 minutes an evening, which I would normally spend, just staring at the ceiling. And I would get on a typewriter and I would make myself cover the front and back of one sheet of paper on the typewriter with a short story. And all the short stories would be about this one character I'd recently invented named Weird Pig. And I just sort of made myself do that. It was just a way to sort of keep my brain working at a time when my brain wasn't working very well. And to make use of the time that I would normally spend just, doing that, not sleeping. And so I wrote one short story, and then I wrote another one, and then I wrote another one. And then soon enough, I had, a whole, like an armload of these stories, most of which weren't any good, but some of which were. And I would just sort of retype them out onto the computer. And I sent a few out, and they got published, and then I realized, okay, this is turning into something. And eventually none of those original stories ended up in the novel, but what came out of that process was the novel. And the novel is kind of structured in a way that kind of reflects that. You can't tell from looking at it, but I don't know why I'm showing you the inside, but none of the chapters are very long. The chapters are all, it's very sort of digestible in that, it's structured the way I wrote it. All the chapters are about, maybe 2 pages long. I don't think there's any chapter that's longer than a few pages. It's sort of you can kind of see in the book my effort to try to keep my own attention and keep myself awake in my basement and keep myself sane. And that's sort of, and then, there was a lot of careful sort of planning and stuff that went into shaping the novel later, but the original kind of frustration that led to it is still very much kind of baked into it. And that's, so I don't know that that's inspiration. It's more like I felt like I was backed into a corner, and I realized that the ways I had done things weren't working. So I was just like, well, I'm going to do something completely different and write it. And I did not even, originally my plan was to write a book that no one would ever want to publish. And then somewhere in the process of that, I realized that I'd actually for whatever reason, that approach meant that I actually wrote something people did want to publish. It doesn't make any sense to me, but anyway, that's the story of Weird Pig.
I would tell students that you entertain yourself, you can entertain other people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's great. Thanks for sharing that, Robert. Dawn, would you like to talk a little bit about what inspired you to write your piece?
I love it that Robert went to his basement to write to keep himself sane, because writing actually makes me insane. So I had completed and published 3 collections of essays, true stories, and I was thinking, this last one is taking too long to write. So I thought I'd go through my already published stories and put together a really fast collection of just on one theme, maybe shorter, and just get it out there while I'm writing my opus. And I was going through my stories, and I was surprised to discover that the issue of race came up even when I was writing about yoga or going to the grocery store or walking through the neighborhood. So I thought I would write about that, and it deserved a deeper exploration. It didn't turn out to be a quick book, and things kept happening. So it was really hard, but just my surprise and curiosity about how often it came up led to a whole book.
That's amazing. Wow. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Dawn. Thank you. Kathy, would you like to talk about what inspired your piece?
Sure. So when I was 12, I read a book that my mom had from her mom. It was written in 1800s, and it was by Hector Malot, or Malot, I'm not sure, it's French. And it was called Adventures of Perrine. I don't think it's in print anymore, although you can get some copies that are old. And it's a similar type of story about an orphan that goes to find her family. But the thing that inspired me about this book was my favorite book of all time because she had such great character. She was smart, she was strong, she was imaginative, she was honest, she was clever. One of the things she did that really impressed me was that she didn't identify herself when she got to her destination as who she really was, because she didn't want her grandfather to think, oh, she's just coming here for money. But she pretended to be someone else, another name, and then he grew to love her for who she was until he found out who she was really. And so that just kind of really impressed me, that she had that kind of character. So I wanted to do something similar, not exactly the same. So I like the time period of the late 1800s, early 1900s, because of all of the changes that happened with the second industrial revolution. I just think that's a really interesting time period. So I just went on vacation in my mind, and the story kind of took off. I mean, like, it started and then it took me on vacation.
That's always good.
Uh-huh. In fact, I had a surprise ending. I mean, I didn't even anticipate it. I wrote it completely through, and then I changed it at the end. And I had to go back and change a bunch of stuff because I had a twist.
That's always fun when you kind of surprise yourself in the process, I think. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. And so we've talked a little bit about this, but I want to maybe dig a little bit deeper about what your writing process is like. So Polly, would you like to start? Okay.
I'd love to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the process for, I don't know where to hold this book because I'm a little dyslexic. Okay, there.
Good. Yeah.
The process for writing a short story is a lot like what you guys have been saying. You feel like it's going to be quick. You write it for yourself and you're entertaining yourself. You write a lot of them and you throw away some, right? But my process isn't really like that because of being a mom and working, and my creativity is all the time. So I feel like I'm writing a lot where it's just the writing is sort of discovering. I'm discovering a story. It almost feels like I'm carving it away sometimes.
Yes.
And so I just love it. It's a lot like art, I guess, because I'm an artist too, and I paint. And I like to paint in layers. And I love collage. So I've never done this before, but we didn't have an illustrator for this book, so I illustrated it myself, and I took free domain photos and some of my art and created these art collages to demonstrate kind of how stories are like layers. Mm-hmm. So you can see this one is called The Editing Room. Mm-hmm. So it looks like old film and clocks and things. And in this story, it's from a woman an author who lives in Budapest, and she writes about what it's like, how life is like layers, and sometimes it feels like we're in a film that's being edited. Parts of our life suddenly seem like they weren't there before, now they are, or things drift away, and I feel like that's how writing is. Things just materialize, and you're surprised. And then other things you're continually cutting out. So I really enjoy the process, no matter if I'm the writer, the artist, the editor. I just love all the parts of it.
Oh, that was awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Robert, would you like to talk about your writing process? You've already shared a little bit about it, but.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. And the one that that went into Weird Pig for sure. That was a sort of strange process that I don't really want to reproduce. Yeah, I prefer to sort of have work come together very slowly and very carefully, and to kind of let I think I like it. I like taking time with things. I've had to learn to take my time with things, but when you do take your time with things, that means that you're a constantly changing person. It means you have so many different selves. If you write something over the course of 2 years, you are getting yourself at the beginning of that process and yourself at the end of the process, all kind of informing the work. And I think that the work kind of benefits from that. And not every book needs that, but some of them do. But yeah, no, I like everything you just said. I should also mention I had this other book come out this year called I Am Here to Make Friends, which is a short story collection. And I mention it because I'm also a short story writer. That's sort of what I do more often than am writing sort of longer stuff, novel length stuff. And there's a little bit more interesting. My biggest problem as a writer is being patient. I'm a very impatient writer. I'm a very anxious person generally, and I'm medicated for it, but I'm still anxious. And so I have trouble just letting things lie, because it helps to take your time with things. It helps to sort of write something, then step away from it for a while, and then come back to it. I have a lot of trouble with that because I know when something's unfinished, I get very worried that I'm never going to finish it, and it just freaks me out. And so something that helps is to actually write out a hard copy version of it first, whether it's on a typewriter or by hand. I kind of do both. I know I'm one of those guys with a typewriter, and that's kind of sucks, but it's a very useful machine. And so what I've taken to doing is writing out the first draft of a short story in typewritten form, and I even use I try to see if I can write a story as short as just the front and back of one long sheet of paper. I try different. I'm very interested in sort of how writing is sort of physically present in your life, and I think it's good to have to be able to point to a pile of papers and say, yeah, that's the novel I'm working on, rather than it being a digital thing. Anyway, so I write out the first draft. I hang it up on my refrigerator over there. The house came with an old refrigerator, and I put beer in it, and I hang it on the fridge, and I just sort of try to forget about it. And so that when I come back to it, and when I go back to the fridge, and I'm okay, I have some time to work on something that I've already written, I can be surprised by it and be like, oh, right, I wrote that. I don't remember what comes after the first page. And so there's a sort of, I think there's something to be said for kind of forgetting and then remembering and being a stranger to your own work. Anyway, I'm always trying to trick myself into making the work better.
Awesome.
That is.
Thank you, Robert.
Mm-hmm.
Dawn, would you like to share a bit about your writing process?
Well, on a daily basis, my ideal process is that I sit down at the computer or with handwriting at 9 o'clock in the morning. I set the timer for 25 minutes. I write for 25 minutes. The timer is downstairs, so I get up after 25 minutes, run downstairs to turn off the timer. This gives me 5 minutes of exercise. I also set a glass of water by the timer, so I also get in my 8 glasses of water.
I like that.
This is my ideal, but I'm also very distracted. So I have an application called Leech Block that blocks the internet from my computer, which is until I start checking my email on my phone. Now, in a broader sense, it's more, it's like this. Once I had this, I was under a deadline. I had something I had to do by the end of the day, but I was in the shower and this other idea came to me and it would not let me go. So I had a bargain with the idea. And I said, if you just please let me finish my deadline, then I'll come back to you tomorrow. And the idea left, and it left me alone for the rest of the day. And sometimes if I'm stuck, I can ask, and this goes to dreams, I'll ask before I go to bed, how do I end this story? And then when I'm lucky, I will wake up in the morning and I'll have a whole paragraph. My dad was a writer, so once I asked him, and he's been gone for years, but I asked right before I went to bed, I said, Dad, can you help me with this story? I don't know how to end it. I woke up in the morning, Dad had made a cameo in my dreams. And I woke up with the entire last paragraph pre-written. And then another part of the process is visual. I love that about art, because sometimes I don't know the order of a story. Once I was so confused about the order of it, and it was pretty long, so I cut it up, printed it out, cut it up, and rearranged it like a puzzle on the dining room table. So the process is ideally organized, but in reality, fairly spontaneous and chaotic.
That's fantastic, Dawn. Thank you. By the way, there was a comment. Someone said they love how you work exercise into your
Yeah, I
routine.
did that too.
So, I think you've inspired all of us to. Well, Kathy, would you like to talk a little bit about your writing process?
Well, it's funny. I write most of the book in my recliner while my husband's watching TV reruns. And since they're reruns, I've seen them a zillion times, so I really tune out and I can get right in there. And sometimes I do put on headphones and listen to some music that inspires me for a certain scene or something. And I do that. And I don't know if I'm a pantser or a planner, but I think I'm more of a planner, and I am impatient too. So I want to be like, efficient. So I had a lot of help, and this is another question you're going to ask about, but I had a lot of help from this book, Dan Schwabauer, who's a local author too, and he helped with just sectioning off, like you were talking about, Dawn, about making it into a puzzle. It kind of is like that, where you have the 4 important turning points of the book, and then you have all the other stuff. Well, each one of those other things has to build to the next thing, and you have all these questions that you have to ask. Once I organized it that way, then I could say, okay, this is what I'm going to answer that with, and that's kind of how I did this book. Mm-hmm. It kind of helped me organize, and then I just let my mind go with it within that framework. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of I guess I'm a planner.
That's great. I myself don't plan, so I always am fascinated by people who do, because that's not my process whatsoever. So thank you all for sharing that. So speaking of, obviously we're in very interesting times, as we were talking about prior to this broadcast. Has that affected your writing process in any way? Has that made any changes to how you go about it? And we'll just, Polly, if you're okay with starting this one.
I was just thinking, what you said is reminding me, Kathy, that when I teach my students, my college students, we're always discussing how readers are different from each other. They perceive reading in a different way. So I'm definitely a pantser. Like, I don't plan my writing very much, but also I think in pictures, not words, and I never know what words will come out. All my words seem to be in hidden word bank in my mind based on all the old books from my grandmother's attic from like the 1890s, and I didn't even know they were old when I read them. So old words come out, and I'll be like, what does that even mean? And I'll look it up, and it's right, Yeah. So I'm a subconscious writer. And other people I come across, like my friend Melinda Cordell, she told me about the author fair at the library a couple years ago, and she got me interested in publishing books. And she told me that she writes, she has an old typewriter, electric typewriter with no screen, just a little strip. and she'll write like the way you would knit. She'll put it in her lap and she'll write, and then she plugs it into the computer and it downloads a certain number of words. And I tried to figure out, how can you do that? How can you write without looking? And how can you write like while lying in a chair asleep or watching TV or whatever? And she said she's the kind of writer who doesn't picture pictures when she writes. She pictures the words.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that would be a wonderful gift to be to be able to do that. But I think we're all different kinds of writers, but we're all different kind of readers. And that's what I love about now, is that we're taking these different times and, processing, how do we share things that are helpful, and how do we keep being creative? And I think it's just like by working together, connecting, and starting to remember why we do this, and, just talking about how much we love stories and how we do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Robert, so how has this changed your process during this time?
It's funny because I feel like I already had. I mean, this is a weird time for everybody. It's as weird for me as it is for a lot of people. But having young kids already kind of hamstrings you so much and can restricts the amount of time that you can spend on things so much. Like, I feel like I was sort of weirdly prepared for, this kind of lockdown beginning. And we've been in lockdown for the whole time. We haven't done we've done almost nothing. I mean, my kids have been in school and that helps a ton. But the last 8 months have just been we've been inside all the time. But I feel like having kids and having young kids around put such strict kind of constraints on what you can do. I felt like this was just more of that. What has changed is basically I do find that I'm a very sensitive person, and I'm not ashamed of that, and I'm a very anxious person. The anxiety level goes up by a lot. And I'm more afraid of just what's going to happen than ever. And so that has kind of changed. I find that in a response to that, it's harder to get too immersed in an idea for very long. I'm writing more stuff. I don't think anything I'm writing now will turn into a Weird Pig novel or anything like that. I think that was a one-time thing, but I am sort of the Weird Pig project sort of put a kind of tool in my toolkit, just gave me opened up an approach to me where I could keep writing without getting too into without having to have much continuity one day to the next. I can just sort of go in and out in an hour, and I have a draft of a story, and it's probably not very good, but every once in a while something does come out of that, and it is good. That I have to sort of work on a I don't want to say more shallowly, but yeah. But that's kind of what it is. It's sort of like taking a shower versus taking a long bath. Is kind of what I've had to do. And that's how it's changed for me.
I think we all totally get that. Yeah. Dawn, how about you? How has this changed your writing?
I have to write by myself in total quiet.
Mm-hmm.
But being in quarantine has taken away all of my face-to-face interactions, which is really bad for me. I discovered that I get energy from those in-person interactions. And what I've done is joined a couple of co-writing groups. We meet on Zoom, and say in one of them, there are 4 or 5 of us writing together. We write for 45 minutes and then look up for 15 minutes and chat. And this is really helpful to me because it gets me to my writing. It happens at the same time. And scheduling myself helps with deal with the depression that is prone for me when I'm isolated like this. But keeping to a schedule really helps. I really like these co-writing groups because it gives me I can still write alone in the quiet. But when I look up at my computer screen or switch to the Zoom view, there are 4 other people writing and we chat. It's just, I'm going to keep doing this after, if we ever get out of quarantine. I'm going to keep writing like this.
I completely understand. I think a lot of people are feeling all of these aspects so far. Kathy, how about you? How has your writing process changed during all this?
The writing process hasn't changed at all because I'm still writing in my chair. But I mean, conferences, school visits, and things all came to a halt that were scheduled. And our writer group, the writer group that I'm a part of, we went to monthly Zoom meetings, and I haven't met with anybody personally. I do work 3 days a week. I am retired, but I do work 3 days a week, and that hasn't. I still go to work. I still see people, so I still get energy that way, and take a little break that way. But it hasn't. Other than the interactions with schools and conferences and the writer group, it hasn't really affected my writing at all.
Okay.
But I'm anxious for that time to be back.
Right.
I did do a school visit last week in person.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, there was, we took precautions and everything. I had to wear a mask in there, and then the kids were all spaced way apart, and I had to stay behind a line, and it was still there. You were able to interact with people, at least. So that was really great.
It's amazing that you're able to do that. That's very few and far between at this point. Well, thank you all. We'll shift gears a little bit and kind of talk about why you chose the type of publishing you chose. So I think we've got kind of a variety of folks, whether it's traditional self or a hybrid of some sort. So why did you choose the type of publishing that you did? What spoke to you about it? Holly, would you mind kicking us off?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that I kind of agree with about the having small kids at home. But I used to write when I had small kids at home. I would drive them to the preschool and then go write the entire time. And then when I really started writing again, it was in between, like nap time. I would write poetry. So I'm primarily a poet, and I of course am working on a novel and other things, but poetry is my passion, and I kept submitting my book to different publishers. I spent 10 years writing it. This one here. 10 years writing it. My whole 20s. So, and then I couldn't get anybody to accept it, and sometimes you pay a fee to submit it, up to $30 or $45. So I calculated I'd spent several $100s in 10 years. And finally I talked to a visiting poet in residence here in Kansas City. And she said most poets self-publish their first couple of books because they need it to do gigs, right? They're going to read poems, they're talking to groups. And I said, well, isn't that cheating if I self-publish a book of poems? It's not real. She said, no, it's still real. You're trying to share it with people. So once I did it, I took it to work, and I worked at Penn Valley downtown Metropolitan Community College. And people just picked up the book, and they would rub it against their face, and they would say, oh, it's so soft. You made this? And I'd be like, yeah, I mean, it came that way. We printed it. And when we painted this cover, I was like, yeah, one of my paintings. I paint all the time. And they were like, oh, and you wrote this? And they read one, and they start to tear up, and they're like, I love this. Will you come speak at my class? Will you do a reading? And I had never done a reading, and I was like, I guess so. And then it just kept rolling, and then I thought, oh, so people really like books. I've been reading them my whole life. I've written hundreds of published, but people love books. I should keep doing this. So now I have 3. You know, the 3rd one came out this year. This is my favorite, Puss in Boots. And I had my very first reading last weekend at Riverfront Reading Series, and so I really appreciate that first poet who told me to go for it, because
That's good.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love that the barrier is no longer there, that people can actually get their work out there. But that's a whole other soapbox, I'll say, for another time. So, Robert, how about you? Why did you choose the type of publishing that you've been utilizing?
So for Weird Pig, so as I mentioned previously, I sort of wrote this as I did not think that I wrote Weird Pig was originally meant to be like the book that would be just too ridiculous for anybody to actually publish, and I sort of went into it without any intention of ever publishing. I thought it was just going to be like a manuscript in a drawer until, I don't know, a certain point where I started revising it and sort of shaping it and actually making it presentable. I kind of knew that the big publishers weren't really going to go for it. It's just a little bit too episodic. It's a little bit too it's a satirical novel that sort of shoots at everything and sort of goes in all directions in a way that I think it works. I mean, I don't mean to put my own book down. It's just a certain kind of novel. It's a little bit off kilter in a way that I just did not have faith that that a big publisher would take a chance on it. And I'm well known a little bit, but I'm not like a big name. I don't have a huge Twitter following. I just knew that a big publisher was not going to gamble on Weird Pig. But I did think that smaller publishers might. And so I sent it off to the Nilson Prize for a first novel at Southeast Missouri State University Press. And lo and behold, it won the contest. And there was an editing process after that. But yeah, that's sort of how it ended up where it ended up. I don't know what would have happened had it not won that. I think I may have self-published it sooner or later, or I may have just put it away somewhere and moved on to the next thing. But yeah, that's sort of how it ended up where it ended up.
Awesome, thank you. Don, would you like to talk about the type of publishing you've chosen?
I'm a self-publisher, and I really like the independence, and I like being able to get my books directly to my readers on my own schedule, which is sometimes slow, but there's no gatekeeper between me and the reader. And that point about being in person with your fans, and they love books, and you feel like a celebrity, and it's just a more direct process. Plus, I really can't handle being said no to. And the submission process is very time consuming. I've spent a decade successfully submitting stories to journals and magazines. And I find that the time I spend organizing submissions and hearing back and getting no is time away from writing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are all great points. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Kathy, how about yourself? Type of publishing that you've chosen?
Well, I chose independent publishing because of my age primarily, because I didn't want to wait forever, and on the risk that I may be published. So, and also I like the control. I like every part of it. Like Polly, I like the editing, although I did hire editors. Mm-hmm. And even then I should have hired more. But anyway, well, that's advice for later. But you should always read your story all aloud is what I'm thinking. Mm. Because that really, you can catch a lot of stuff that your eyes just gloss over. But I chose independent publishing because of my age primarily, and I wanted to I wanted to see the effect of books in kids' hands and how kids related to them, and I really have enjoyed that. And I've helped a lot of other authors in the process too, and I've gotten to meet a lot of interesting people. It's just a lot of fun. And I have this book, which is I have a soft and a hardcover, and I ebook, and an audiobook is in production. But there's a difference between the soft cover book, and it's not as like inside here. There's a black and white map, where in the hardback it's a color insert front and back. So it's got on the pages, it's got like a shadow. I don't know if you can see that, but it's kind of a shadow. And it's kind of neat. And I really like the ability to say, I want a Smythe Sewn book that's got spot gloss, that's got, I like to have all that control. And so this was what I have. And the only place I can actually sell this hardcover book right now is through me direct, because I haven't got it on Amazon Seller Central yet. And that's because I had it printed somewhere besides Ingram. It was not able to go that way. So, but yeah, I just like the independent part.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you all for that. Yeah, I also like the opportunity to give authors a chance to kind of spread their wings and see what works best for them, whether it's self, hybrid, traditional, whatever. I'm glad that those options exist for folks. So are you working on anything right now? You have something you want to talk about a bit, maybe? Polly, would you like to start us off? Something you're working on? Yeah.
I was going to say that after what I primarily do now is editing. Because after I started self-publishing, I decided I wanted to go use all my education and experience to create a publishing company. So we went out and started an LLC, got the trademark, came to the library at Woodneath for some small business training, took classes, hired lawyers to make contracts. We did the whole thing, built a website, and we became a publisher through Submittable. And that's been where I discovered what I really love the most, because I'll have an idea, like I'd love to write about all the people in town who are really passionate about food trucks, or they really have really great careers that are their artistic passion. And I can't write all that. That would take me a million years to interview and write all that. But I can put a call out to writers and say, hey, do you know someone? Or are you a food truck owner? Do you love food? Do you have a passion for something creative? Can you send us your story? And then I get to read all this fresh material. So that's what I've been working on. And then meanwhile, during quarantine, I've done some house sitting, like little writers' retreats. So I've written, and I started my own personal new project. I'm writing a nonfiction book called Pray Like a Woman. I think that's taken 2 years too. It's done now. I just have to hire an editor and do all that hard ending part, the after writing.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that too. There's always little projects. I feel like I kick them. I feel like I have piles on the floor, and I kick this book, kick this story, kick this poem, kick this editing project, kick this class. And eventually, it feels like I'm doing nothing, but eventually little things pop up finished. And so I love it when that finally happens.
I relate to that so much, yes. Awesome, thank you. Robert, can you talk a little bit about something you might be working on now?
Yeah, so I have a couple of sort of projects I'm working on. I mean, I'm sort of trying to get back into writing. I am writing, rededicating myself to writing short stories. I mean, I always sort of have stories on the back burner, but when I'm not working on a longer project, I feel like I get to breathe again. And I kind of prefer writing short stories. I have a lot of fun I have more fun with them, and I think that they it's just like a smaller. They're very hard to write, but it's a smaller thing. You can kind of wrap your mind around it a little bit more readily and a little bit more easily. And it's a little bit more fun, I think, than writing novels. The writing novels can be fun. So I'm writing a short story. Like, I'm interested right now in a lot of short stories about neighbors. I'm just like, now that I own a house and I'm, up in Parkville, and I like all my neighbors and I get along with all of them, but it's very hard not to think like, well, what if a horrible person moved into that house and like bought a giant turtle that he let wander the neighborhood, and the turtle like ate the brake line on your, or whatever. Like, I'm very interested in just the way that we structure our society and the way that we just kind of live next to the people who happen to buy a house right next to you, and you have no idea what they're going to be like, and they could decide that you're a Satanist and want to get the authority. Anything can happen. So I'm interested in that. I also I finished writing a draft. I call it a first draft, but it's really more like a 9th draft of 20 drafts. But so I'm sort of letting it sort of sit for a while. I wrote a novel called Eat the Rich, which is about 4 young. It's very silly. It's kind of like Weird Pig, but a little bit closer to reality. I'm sort of making my way a little bit closer, project by project, to something that someone might want to pay me a bunch of money for, which this isn't it, but I like it. It's about 4 young women who get into a van. They abandon their lives suddenly and get into a van and drive across the country at random, kind of killing and eating rich people. And it's sort of about income inequality. It's absurd, but it's about it's about the real, very real and very serious problems of income inequality and a certain sort of exaggerated response to it. But it's more than anything, it's about just like the clashing personalities of these 4 very dangerous and horrible but funny people who are like at each other's throats all the time verbally. And that's sort of what propelled me forward when I was writing it.
I want to read all of it.
I also concur. I loved the turtle wandering the neighborhood. It reminded me of Robert Frost. Good fences make good neighbors, and
yes.
You need a really good fence to keep out a giant turtle. Anyway, Dawn, would you like to share a bit about something you're working on right now?
Well, I've had this idea to write an entire collection of essays that's only lists. So things like 12 disasters that I think are going to happen today by the end of the day, 12 reasons to not write, 12 things I do to avoid writing, 12 moral dilemmas of 2020, funny things and thoughtful things, but all lists.
That's a really cool idea. I don't know that I've seen anything like that, but
I think those poems, list poems.
Oh, there you go.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. Kathy, is there
Well,
something you're working on? Yeah.
Yeah, aside from my blog, which I do twice a month, so I have one author update blog, and then I have a review blog on a book I've read. So that keeps me reading too, other people's things, and so I want to read some of that. All of you guys. I want to read some of your stuff. I'll put them on my list of things to read.
Oh,
and then
there's another list.
And then talk. Yeah, there you go. And then plus, I also am working on marketing the book because it just came out November 1st. And then also I'm working on putting together some journals, and I'm really excited. I'm going to have one. So I have this earlier book series. This is a series. Bandana Acres, which is available for ages 5 through 8. And so anybody who's in the audience that has those age children might like those. But I'm going to have a journal for that age group and also a journal for the secondary age group. And on the secondary, I'll probably have a girl and a guy's cover. It'll be the same kind of questions, but I'm going to have questions that are like starters and then just blank pages with writing, lines. And I'm doing journals. So I'm going to do 3 journals. And I think it'll go along with Emmeline and her journaling. So, and I want to be able to have kids be able to write down their thoughts And so that's the next thing I'm doing. And then I'm working on the sequel to Emmeline.
So you're actually working on some branding almost, kind of tying all those together with Emmeline. Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. Well, thank you all for sharing. We have a few minutes left, and we actually have a few questions from the audience, so I figured we'd pop those over. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring these up on the screen here. And so, yeah, so hopefully you can all see those. So the question is, what would be the best advice you would share with your younger self who is dreaming of becoming an author? That's a pretty fantastic question. I know this one is not, since this is new, I'm going to give each one of you an opportunity to chime in if you have thoughts, so we won't necessarily go in any specific order, but I'll open up the floor if anyone has any thoughts.
I do. I wanted to become a writer, and I remember especially in 8th grade, my English teacher told me that I should become a writer. And sometimes I feel like I'm talking to my 8th grade English teacher, Mrs. Steinhauser, or myself all the time, trying to say, I'm still trying to be a writer. And she handed out this pencil to us that said, I am loved or something, or Mrs. Steinhauser loves me. And so I have that pencil, and it reminds me that writing is really all about loving your younger self and being spontaneous. And you know how children are super fierce, if they want a pet turtle, they will never give up asking about it, trying to get one. And I think that's how it is with writing. We just have to be super fierce and celebrate every small victory, no matter how tiny it is. Just really enjoy it, even our list of rejections.
That's really good advice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have some.
Go ahead.
So I think one of the things is, if you want to be a writer, to read a lot. So readers make good writers. Also, I think it's good to journal, or even just write down notes about what your feelings are, and be able to express things in words from your mind, get it down on paper. And that's a good exercise. And that is a beginning to writing. And also, as you get older, if you join any kind of writing group, that helps a lot too.
Absolutely. Great advice.
I would tell my younger self to go ahead and enjoy all the reading that she did, to hide, just to enjoy it. And I would tell her to go ahead and write. She doesn't have to show it to anybody. Just write a little bit every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Great. Any other advice for this person?
Oh, I could say what I would tell my younger self. I would, if I could go back and talk to my younger self, I would just tell him, and he wouldn't listen, but I would tell him to just be patient. I mean, that was the thing that I had to learn, is that the work benefits from stepping away from it. The work benefits from it taking a long time, taking longer than it seems like it should. I mean, there's patience in the sort of large scale. We live in a youth obsessed culture, which is not news to anybody, but that bleeds into the literary world, where you have lists of the 30 under 30, the 30 best writers under 30, and then they have I think there's one for under 40. And I never took that too seriously. I always kind of laughed, I turned 30. I'm never making that list now. I think it's a destructive part of our culture. But there's patience on that scale, but there's also just the small scale patience of just if a story's not coming together, even though you've worked on it for a month, that means that the story, the things you're working on kind of have their own lifespans and their own processes of development. It's like trying to hurry a child into growing up. It just happens on its own. A lot of this stuff happens on its own, and you just have to be there when it's, to kind of receive whatever it's giving you. And so, yeah, patience is it's the hardest thing, even for me now, to be patient with my own process, but you benefit from it, I think.
That's awesome. Thank you all. We have one more question here. So other than in-person readings, what do you find is the best way to market your books? And again, if anyone has thoughts.
I'm curious. I'm all ears because I honestly don't know. I mean, that's the only way I know how to market like a book with a small press, and that's been the big problem of 2020 is you can't do that stuff. You can do this, and there's a little, but it's not. And this is great, and thank you so much for putting this together. Like, this is great, but this, like normally when somebody publishes a book, as you all know, like you go on like a mini tour, like you travel to Columbia, you go to St. Louis at least. In a lot of cases, and you get to sort of just be present among people, and like that means you're connected to other people because of your book, but it also means you sell some books. And I don't know if you. I'm talking a lot, and I have no ideas. So.
Well, I've been working on this for a while now, and taken a lot of classes and courses. Aside from the in-person visits. If there's any events that you can be a part of, that would help. And like growing an email list of your own, that's important. But really to get beyond the field of your own, it's very interesting. I've just discovered this like this week. And I've been reaching out to what they call influencers. So if you go on Amazon and you go to your little author page, click on your name and it goes to your little author page, it'll have other authors similar to you. So like you might check out these authors too. Or even if you click on a genre or go to a genre that's your genre and click on some authors that are in there and just read about their bio and see if they kind of click with you, and then see if you can reach out to them, and you don't want to ask them for anything at all. Maybe you want to compliment their work or something. You want to give first. Give. Be honest and be truthful and genuine, and be a person and be a human and have a human interaction with someone and kind of grow a relationship first, and then possibly, especially if they're an independent author, they might collaborate with you later. And that'll help to grow your audience too, because then you're sharing your audience with their audience and they're sharing theirs with you.
I think it's a good idea. I think that's just right. And also remember that our readers are often creatives. They love to write. They love to read. They're creative in some way. They love to be inspired and celebrate things. They're emotional, and they're relational. They're real people. And I think connecting with people. So I try to find ways to reach out to other writers, and I think that helps grow. I created I looked all over town for a place where writers connect in the area, and I couldn't see like a lot of cross-linking, so I created a page of all the things in town where we can connect as writers and creatives, and try to just put the links in. And I'm following all those people, and just trying to go to other people's poetry readings. And I think if we celebrate each other, then that's the best method.
Right.
Absolutely.
I've noticed with this book that people are emailing me or Facebooking me saying, I just read your book and I bought one for my sister for a birthday, or I just bought 4 of your books, or things like that. And so people giving my book to other people seems to be the best marketing ever. And so the only thing I can do is write a book that is the best I can put out there, and then be patient.
Yeah, patience.
Yeah.
It's a killer.
Patience comes back up. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you all. That was some great advice for both those readers and listeners. So thank you. And I know we're out of time now, but I think this has been a wonderful time conversating, chatting with each other. So thank you all for being here. I have placed in the chat a link to our online program survey, the Story Center. So as I think most folks know, Our programs are provided by the Kauffman Foundation, so we would really appreciate if you filled out that survey. Let us know how you enjoyed this event, and if you have suggestions for any other programs that you'd like to see coming up, that would be great. I just want to thank you authors for being here, for Polly Alice McCann, Robert Long Foreman, Don Downey, Kathy J. Perry. Thank you so much for being here. And we'll take one quick second. If you have one last thing you'd like to share with our audience, I will open the floor for that.
My book.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Excellent. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll also say Weird Pig is available. You can get it wherever you get books.
The silhouette on the cover of my book is me.
Is it really? That's cool.
It's amazing.
I love that.
That is so awesome. Excellent. Well, thank you again for being here. This has been wonderful. By the way, Dawn, someone mentioned that they love lists and they will read your book when it comes out. So there you go.
Thank you.
But on behalf of the Story Center and all our authors, again, my name is Dave Burns, and I just want to thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you at the next event. So thank you very much and take care.
Thank all of you.
Yeah, nice to meet you all.
Thank you all. All right. Thank you.